I often see people rule out self-publishing as an option because of this idea that you need to have money in order to self-publish. That's not true. While publishing is a business and businesses require money, there's no rule that says the money has to come from you. You just need to be able to convince other people to give you theirs. But Deb, I don't know anybody with money to spare. That's fine. Family, friends, and random acquaintances are probably not the best people to ask unless they happen to be the exact target audience for your book. But Deb, I don't think I can convince anybody to give me money to publish a book. Well, I've got some bad news for you. Regardless of whether you're going TradPub or indie, at some point along either of those paths, you're going to have to ask somebody to give you money for your book, whether that's an advance on future sales or just plain sales and page reads. But Deb, I don't care about making money and I don't want to run a business. I just want people to read my books. It's all the same thing, really. Time is money and money saves time. So if you can convince people to give you their time, you can convince them to give you their money. Here's what I would do if I wanted to self-publish but had no money of my own. First, figure out your starting point. If you're here, then great. Don't jump into writing the book just yet. If you're over here, then things are going to be a little harder because you've done the whole thing backwards. But on the bright side, so have most people, including me and practically all of TradPub Fiction. So you're in good company. In order to convince people to give you money, you need a pitch. Who is your book for and why they will buy it? This is easier if you're writing books that have a clear purpose beyond just general entertainment. If you're writing genre fiction, it's going to be a bit harder, especially if you didn't set out writing to market. When you think you've got a solid pitch, test it out on as many people as you can and study their reactions. Refine and repeat until you stop getting glazed eyes and you start getting questions about when the book is coming out and where people can go to buy it. Yeah, it's hard. The second thing you need to do is figure out how much money you need to raise. Now, the question of how much does it cost to self-publish is in the same category as how long is a piece of string. That said, I think it's somewhere between $300 to $500 as a recommended baseline. $10 to $35 if you're struggling to raise funds, and $0 if you truly have no way of raising even $10. I'll take you through all three scenarios, but before I do that, let's go through the underlying assumptions behind these numbers. Assumption number one is you are only publishing in ebook format, or at the very least, you're only getting the ebook cover design. You can publish in print format if you really want to, as long as you use the ebook cover as your front cover and you DIY the spine and the back cover with one of the many free cover design tools out there, and you don't go direct with Ingram Spark. Assumption number two is you are not using any form of paid software and you are not buying any additional equipment. You're using whatever writing apparatus you have access to and the free tools and services out there to write, edit, and format your manuscript into an ebook. I'll have links to all the ones that I recommend in the spreadsheet we'll be stepping through, and the link to that spreadsheet will be in the description. Assumption number three is no paid editing. You're going to rely on the brutal honesty from unpaid alpha and beta readers and yourself, and the free versions of tools like Grammarly, Pro Writing Aid, and Hemingway. Now, a quick sidebar here before anybody jumps into the comment section about self-published books being terrible because they're not professionally edited. No, just no. That's a myth that requires a whole separate other video to explore, and I will put that here when that's done. But for now, all I'm going to say is getting a 100,000 word novel professionally edited based on these rates from the Editorial Freelancers Association, that's going to bring you several $1,000s. And if you decide to get all of this done, you're looking at a 5-figure title P&L at minimum. I'm not saying that professional editing is not worth it. What I am saying though is if you're on a budget, and I assume you were if you're watching this video, then I think your money would go a lot further if you spent it elsewhere. Assumption 4 is no paid marketing or promotions. Ads, deal sites, book tours, etc. They're all about driving traffic to your book, which means they're dealing with discoverability, which is a separate thing to publication itself. And we're going to talk about that in the next video. Assumption number 5 is you are entering all of the various legal agreements that you need to enter in through the publication process under your legal name as an individual. If you plan on publishing under a pen name or listing an imprint name as the publisher of your book, then I recommend you go and seek professional legal and financial advice for your situation to determine if you need any registrations and if there are any other things you need to consider. With that out of the way, let's start with my recommended baseline of $300 to $500 US. In my opinion, there are only two costs that you have to consider if you're trying to publish on a minimal or non-existent budget. First is an ISBN. You do not technically need an ISBN to publish an ebook, even if you plan to publish to more than just the Kindle store. Pretty much every major retailer out there will let you publish directly without one, and Draft2Digital and Smashwords will both offer you a free one. However, it is worth noting that if you do use the free ISBN, you do not control it. That ISBN remains under the control of whatever platform gave it to you. Your book will get listed under their imprint, and if you choose to leave that platform and change how you distribute your book later, you can't take that ISBN with you. If you do want to get your own, one ISBN will cost anywhere from $0 to $125 depending on where you are. If you're based in the US, then I'm sorry. If you're based in Canada, then I'm super jealous. I have a longer video here that explains all of the essentials of ISBNs. Watch that to get the full context, and then you can make up your mind about whether or not you want to get your own. The second cost you have to consider is your book cover. Covers run the gamut from free to thousands upon thousands of dollars. High-end services like Monzo will run you about $395 for their cheapest custom ebook covers. You can also get pre-made covers, and the prices on these range wildly from $145 for a DeMonzo pre-made to the much cheaper £20 go and write bargain bin pre-made covers. The cheapest custom covers that I've seen around and have heard to be reputable are by Get Covers. Their packages range from about $10 to $35 depending on how many licensed images are used in the cover. I haven't personally used them, but they are an associated business of Meblart, MyBlart, which is another reputable cover design business. If you really can't even find $10, you can try making your own covers by following Derek Murphy's guide and using his templates or the free templates available on a tool like Canva. Just make sure you're carefully reading the terms and conditions around commercial use of any royalty-free images that you're sourcing for your cover, and be warned, you are probably going to spend a lot of time to make something that is not going to be as effective as a professionally designed cover. This applies even if you know somebody who is an artist or a graphic designer professionally, because book cover design is a separate skill set. If you are thinking about using an AI art generator for your cover art, then be careful. Copyright issues surrounding AI generated art is a developing area of law at the moment, and so things are very murky. And even if you're fully across the terms and conditions of whatever generator service that you are using, there is a definite legal risk here. And I'm going to put some links in the description to some articles that explain the risks around that much better than I can. Even putting all of that to one side, prompt crafting is an art in and of itself. You can do some really spectacular things like this, or this, or this, but all of that took a lot of work to get the prompt just right, and hours of compositing and post-processing afterwards. Personally, I think you're better off spending your time on the third and final and most important thing, finding ways to raise the money that you need. If you're not getting it from savings, and you're not making it from your network, and you're not putting it on your credit card, please do not put it on your credit card. The obvious solution left is pre-orders. Do not set up an actual pre-order on Amazon KDP or any of the other self-publishing platforms, because you will not get that money from them until weeks or even months after you've actually published your book. And you need that money now to pay for your cover. Crowdfunding platforms like Kickstarter or Indiegogo is probably going to be the most convenient option, but a storefront on your website or PayPal or the old school method of going door to door and asking people through emails and letters, those methods can work too. And don't forget about grants and sponsorships, which may be options depending on who you are, where you live, and what you're writing. You can get fancy with pre-order pricing, but to keep things simple, I would just use the planned retail price. When you're setting your funding goal, make sure you take into account any platform and transaction fees. Then go forth and pitch your campaign to everybody on the planet that you think could possibly be interested. If people give you money, then that's great. You need to find more people like them. And if you can't find anybody to give you money, then chances are you need to work on your pitch or your book, or both. In which case, go do that and then try again. If the thought of all that makes you cringe, then just think of this as the self-publishing version of querying. It's really not so different from traditional publishing. It's just that if you choose to self-publish, you're time shifting and source shifting the rejections. Instead of getting them from a small group of industry insiders before your manuscript is fit for publication, you're getting it from thousands upon thousands of readers after your book is actually published. And if you have no confidence in your ability to get pre-orders without a cover, I would argue argue that you're not ready to self-publish or to query agents or traditional publishers either. But if you're confident about your book, about your pitch, and you still can't convince anybody to pre-order without a cover, then you might need to consider the possibility that you may not be able to convince people to pay for this book. Does that mean you can't and shouldn't self-publish it? No, it just means that this is the point at which we're going to cross from the business side of things over to the personal finance side of things, which is beyond the scope of this channel, but for the purposes of illustration and completeness, I'm just going to get weird here for a minute and throw out some ideas which may or may not work for you depending on your personal circumstances. Selling stuff may be an option. Unwholesome books, or clothes, or collectibles, or furniture, or appliances, or electronics, or homewares on Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace or eBay or wherever. If you don't have anything of your own to sell, then engage in some good old secondhand goods arbitrage. I personally recommend IKEA furniture. Cutting costs may also be an option. $10 to $35 will get you a professionally designed cover. Can you afford to give up some form of daily luxury just for a few days? Maybe a coffee, maybe a bought lunch, or maybe a month of a subscription service. And if you don't have anything to sell and you can't cut any costs, then you're gonna have to find some creative way of making money. Ryan Trahan used a penny to travel across America in 30 days. Barring extraordinary personal circumstances, I'm reasonably confident that most of us can come up with some amount of money to pay for a professionally designed cover in 30 days. If you can't find $395, can you find $150? Can you find $35? Can you find $10? And if you can't find it in 30 days, can you do it in 45 or 60 or 90? Because whatever you can come up with, it's going to be a win. And as long as that first cover is good enough to get you some sales, you can save up those profits and upgrade to a better cover later. Or if that first cover is doing a perfectly fine job of getting you sales on that first book, save it towards the cover for your next book. So long as you know your pitch and you know your startup costs and you've found ways to raise enough money to pay for those startup costs, that will get you to the point of being published. That is, you will have a properly formatted ebook with an appropriate cover that is available for download, purchase, or reading on one or more retail platforms. And as to getting more readers, that's when the real challenge begins, tackling the problem of discoverability. Because in order to get the people who would love your book to read it, you first have to be able to get it in front of them.